Bucka, 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 bucka. Ha You know the deal. This is me, dog. Beats by Supremo for all of my people, Negroes and Latinos, and even the gringos. Yo, check it, one for Charlie Hustle.
Welcome. I'm here with Rita Nieman. And Mrs. Nieman is part of an organization called H.E.A.T. It's an acronym that stands for Human Exploitation, Anti-Trafficking. And their mission is to bring awareness to human trafficking that is going on globally and more commonly than you would think, locally. Thank you, Mrs. Nieman, for being on the show today.
Well, it is absolutely my pleasure because since I moved here about a year and a half ago, it has been my desire to bring the community of Shepherdstown, which I think is a pretty amazing community, some very well-traveled, well-educated people who do keep track of what's going on in the world. And then this dynamic university where just lots of talent. And I think we need to bring those two talents together to help to fight a huge problem in our society.
I wanted to ask you, what are some of the in the near future hopes that the organization hopes to do and collab with Shepherd University?
Well, Shepherd's been an amazing blessing. I cannot tell you how wonderful they have been, from Rachel Mead and all of her people helping to support. We've been able to show films on campus. We've been able to meet monthly on campus. We had the Shepherd Police Department step up and do a special training for police officers. It's just fabulous. And just yesterday we were able to do a program for the continuing learning? Lifelong learning. Lifelong learning program. So we're kind of reaching at all different levels, and that's really fun. But I guess if I was going to look into a really big vision for the future, I would love to have maybe something like a teach-in where we have a bigger community effort coming together. There are some special people in the community that do work with human trafficking in Washington, D.C., and I would love to have them come out of their hiding places and step up and speak. And when we were in Pittsburgh, we hosted something called the Justice Conference as a telesite, I think you call it, when you don't actually go to the conference, but you can bring it in audio-visually.
Okay, a video conference.
Yeah. And so that is a conference that happens usually East Coast, West Coast type thing, and it's a huge conference, and it's on all justice issues, not just human trafficking, but all kinds of justice issues. So that would be kind of a dream in the future. We've been very excited that the psychology and sociology departments seem to have taken notice and are interested in working with us. The Criminology Club is co-sponsoring our next film with us.
Okay.
So yeah, there's some good things in the future. The closest and the dearest to my heart is the fundraiser for Shenandoah Women's Shelter, upcoming here on May 14th. It's going to be a fun night, and then the next showing of In Plain Sight will be at Covenant Baptist Church. And I say next showing because we have 1 year right to show this film.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we would love to show it in as many venues as possible.
So please take advantage of this opportunity.
If you want to show it, to your organization, your church, your synagogue, your whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever grouping of people would like to take advantage of it while we have the rights, because it is expensive. to get those rights, then that would be exciting too.
And he has recently participated in the 3D Relay for Life event. 3D stands for Direct, Diffuse, and Distract. This past Sunday, April 17th, and May 14th, they have a fundraising event called Back to the 50s. But as we go on, I'll let Ms. Nieman explain. But yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you. It's really, really wonderful to get the word out, because my hope is that more students and faculty and the community will work together closely for this.
Yes, ma'am. We'll make it happen.
Yes.
Starting now and continue to do the work that you have already started.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're getting good with the editing.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, I think for me personally, when I talk to people about human trafficking, almost everyone acknowledges, no matter how old they are or who they are, that, oh yeah, it happens, and it's awful. But it's always in other countries.
Yeah.
And so I hate to just focus on the U.S. because the problem is worldwide, and it is huge, and it is horrendous. But it's so big that for me personally, I have felt like if I can at least get people to open their eyes and see that it is in every zip code in America, every zip code, no exception. And so for that reason, I have just recently tried to kind of focus in on, let's see if we can get people to understand that this is a U.S. problem. The other misconception that happens a lot is people believe that it's foreign nationals that are being used in this sex slavery. But the fact is that and it's so hard because it's such an underground, it's such a well covered up problem in the United States. We're so good at hiding it that we don't have really good statistics. But from the reported cases, we are finding that probably over 80% of them are U.S. citizens and not just people who've been brought into the country for the sex trade or even for illegal work. I mean, you know, human trafficking isn't just about sex. There is labor trafficking. There is also people working in domestic situations, whether they're au pairs or, you know, helping in a home in some way. And oftentimes those situations become very complicated because the employer is totally unfair to the person who's working. They take their documents, they expect 24/7 type hours of work where the person has no freedom of their own. And then some of those people also will have sexual problems during the time that they're working in that kind of employment. So it can be very complex in many ways.
Yes, yes. And just to clarify for the people, could you explain a little bit of what human trafficking is?
Well, I'll sure try to. The thing is that it basically divided into two major categories. So they have called the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, defines a severe form of trafficking in persons as sex trafficking is the recruitment, the harboring, the transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for the purpose of commercial sex act, in which the commercial sex act is induced by force, by fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained the age of 18. So, one of those things that this definition tells us is there is no such thing as a child prostitute.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, it is totally and absolutely the adult's responsibility to realize that this is wrong. There is no child
And
prostitution.
as soon as we start labeling it as prostitution, we forget that they're a victim.
Exactly. Because somehow we think someone chooses this lifestyle. A former survivor looked me square in the eyes and she says, little girls dream of Prince Charming. They do not dream of growing up to be a prostitute.
Exactly. That's a big misconception.
Yeah. And I think whoever did that movie, Pretty Woman,
Mm-hmm.
did a great disservice to the overall image, because somehow there's this conception that these people choose this lifestyle, that they are financially better off because of this lifestyle, and that it can actually have a happy ending.
That's not the case.
There's very few. I hope there are some. I do. I would love to be an optimist and hope that somewhere there is someone who has been able to come up with a normal and healthy relationship out of that. But I think it's a very, very difficult and seldom found, and it takes an awful lot of grace
Mm-hmm.
to get through something like that. The other part of this is labor trafficking, and it's the labor trafficking definition is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, and obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjecting to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. And it is ironic to me that in this country where we supposedly ended slavery, we have more slaves today than we did 200 years ago. And that's sad.
And I believe I did some research that it was the Global Slavery Index, I believe it was. And it was an astonishing number I've seen. GSI, which stands for Global Slavery Index, released an estimated report of 35.8 million people are enslaved.
Think about that number. Now, I'm not good at math, so for me, that number is so big, I almost can't, I can't deal with it. And so when it gets that big, I kind of shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look a person in the eye, you know, when I first got involved in this in Pittsburgh about 9 years ago, through our church, we had an opportunity to help two men who had been labor trafficked, who somehow had gotten the ability to get a hold of law enforcement and were able to prove that their legal documents had been taken away from them and that they were in an enslaved situation. There are laws to help people like that.
Yes.
And there are, you know, ways of getting them to a legal status back in the country. And so through a coalition that was there, which also was headed by the university, which is kind of neat because there was one criminology professor in Pittsburgh area, and she was just on fire. And because she was on fire, she got lots of people around her. She was working with the police, the FBI, you know, Homeland Security, those kinds of things. So my job, and it sounds so small, but my job was every Monday I went to my church that had a food bank, loaded up 2 big things in the back of my car, and I took it to Carlow University where this professor was teaching, and I had a special table with a tablecloth that I would slip these boxes underneath that table in the library. I'd never say anything to anybody. I never met the people that I was helping to feed. But it was fun because I knew that in the chain I was making a very small difference. But food was coming their way.
Yes.
You know, and over time They got their legal status. They were able to get real jobs with, real working hours.
Right.
We had in our group one lady who was a Spanish teacher, high school Spanish teacher, so she got special permission to actually meet with the men, because in this human trafficking thing, there are many, many times that you're helping someone that you will never actually meet that person.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
They deserve the dignity of privacy at
Yes.
that point in their lives. But she was able to translate and to help them with many things. And eventually, within about a year, we were able to bring their families. They were from somewhere in Central America, I've forgotten which country, but the families were brought. We found affordable housing for them. All of us skirmished together, found furniture, clothing, and they had big families. I think one had like 5 children, and it was a joy because we knew we were making a difference. I never met the men, but it was wonderful.
Those are the happy endings we hope to bring to
right.
everybody
Exactly.
affected by human trafficking.
Just for another example, we had a young woman who was rescued, and at the time she was rescued, she was pregnant. She chose to keep that baby. She had the love in her heart for the child, regardless of how this child was conceived. And I had just, for me, that is such an admiration that someone could, overcome that and not hate the child. But so we as a group, we had more fun. A room this size, a whole bunch of women coming in with baby shower gifts, all wrapped up in pretty paper and everything. The mom wasn't there, but we had a blast.
Right.
We had a baby shower, and then we loaded it all into cars, and I think a couple van loads of stuff, and sent it to her. And then we were like expectant grandmothers when the baby was born. And then, we need this size diaper, and we need this size clothes, and it just kept going. It was great joy because we could pray for this person, we could physically do something for the person, and yet we never met her. But that's okay, because in the process, one of the things that we learned is many of these young girls need a new identity. And so they need strange things, like they need a hairdresser who can totally restyle their hair, who can recolor their hair, they need wardrobes, they need education, because many of them, their education was disrupted 12, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And so here's this huge gap of, what normally happens in a life in those years, that needs to be filled in. They need GEDs or something to help them to graduate and then to go on into some sort of a career.
Yes,
And they need a tremendous amount of specialized counseling. This is a very psychologically tough sort of thing to recuperate from.
Yes.
And so there are specialized counselors who work in this field, which is wonderful that there are people like that.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So there is hope.
There is.
Hope.
And you're living proof right now, just trying to make a difference, bring awareness to human trafficking. I want to touch on something that HEAT is doing. I know that the Shenandoah Women's Shelter has had a dramatic increase of survivors taking shelter in their facilities, and y'all have played a direct and indirect role in that.
Yeah, it's kind of wonderful because the university, in a sense, has played a role because the new I think she's the director. I hate to give her the wrong job title, but Katie Spriggs is a Shepherd grad. And she and her team of people, and she has lawyers and everything working over there, have really started educating themselves as to what is human trafficking. And what they have realized is that women who were seeking shelter there oftentimes they just thought it was domestic violence.
Right, right.
But if you ask the right questions
Mm-hmm.
and dig deep enough, long enough, then the picture starts to evolve and you start to see that, oh my goodness, there's more to this than just an abusive husband.
Right.
Yeah. And so, yes, they have, they've been very instrumental, and of course they're not allowed to release
Right. Which is
direct
understandable.
information, but she has shared, you know, triumphantly many times, oh my goodness, we had 3 people in this week, you know,
Mhm.
and we were able then to, they are not designed to be an aftercare facility. They're there to help with the immediate transition,
Mhm.
the immediate need for safety.
Right.
But oftentimes, these people have to be relocated very far away because the nature of this crime is such that that person is very, very valuable to the pimp.
Yeah.
Because if he's a drug dealer, he can sell drugs one time, and then he has to go get more drugs.
Right.
But if he feels he owns a group of girls, or even boys, that he can sell over and over and over again, that's a great loss to him.
Yeah.
And so there is very real danger, which is one reason we always say to people, never, ever, ever try to personally intervene in a situation. Make a phone call. You know, try to get people who are well trained to deal with that situation, because you might endanger yourself, but most likely you will make life much worse
For them.
for that person.
Yeah.
So for the victim, don't add to their troubles. They have trouble enough, you know, with what is happening in their lives. So there's an excellent video that I would recommend that Truckers Against Trafficking
Mhm.
have put on their website, and they call it a training video. They consider themselves the eyes of America because
Right.
they're on the road.
Mhm.
And sadly, truck stops is where an awful lot of this is happening, a lot. And when someone is trafficked, they're seldom kept in one location. So certain major highway corridors, just like we have drug corridors,
Mhm.
we also have corridors where these people are moved from place to place. And there are websites that people go to, and the police do, undercover police work very diligently
Mhm.
on these websites, and they'll see a young woman in one town, say 2 or 3 days, and then she's advertised in the next town, and then pretty quick she'll be advertised in another town, always on the move. And part of that is to help keep them disoriented so that they don't make connections, so that they
Mhm.
don't ever get help.
Right.
Because people will say to me, well, why don't they just run away?
It's not that easy.
Well, some have tried and some have died
Yeah.
in the process. Yeah, it is a very difficult thing to escape safely. And so, thank goodness that with this awareness that the United States has finally started with the Polaris program and things, to have these numbers that you can call anytime, or they can text those numbers anytime. And one of the, see, the good thing about this toll-free number, it's 1-888-373-7888. But you can also text if they're in a situation.
Mhm.
It's interesting because everything's gotten so modern. So one of the ways that a pimp will control is he gives her a phone, but it's very limited use type
Right.
of phone.
Like you would give you like an 8-year-old child.
Right.
Only makes her a phone call.
Yeah, so that he can reach her at any time that he needs to, type thing. But if they can text for help, there's a text that is wonderful that they can use, 233733, which just actually is the numbers for the letters B-E, free, F-R-E-E. And you can text for help that way.
And you can find these numbers at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, excellent, excellent, that's wonderful. The other number that we sometimes seem to forget is call 911.
Yes.
Because more and more police officers are being trained to understand that in these cases, for many years, sadly for many years, we were arresting the victim and then charging them, and the person that was bailing them out was their pimp, which meant that they were even in greater debt to a person than who was abusing them. So it was a vicious cycle of always being indebted.
I remember at a presentation last night, it was said like arresting a prostitute or the victim, and rather than the pimp, it's like arresting somebody who got shot instead of the shooter. And you made a comment on how, you know, advanced these traffickers have become. It's getting to the point that, like was mentioned last night, they're putting computer chips in their victims to keep a track of them, and another way to control them.
Yes. A woman showed up in an emergency room because she'd been so badly abused and beaten and things, and she told the doctors, and at first they wouldn't believe her, but then they did X-ray scans or CT, I don't know what kind of scans they do, but they actually found the tracking mechanism in her and took it out of her because they finally believed what she was saying to be true. You know, the other thing they'll do is they tattoo them quite often with their distinctive tattoo to show ownership. One of the things that kind of broke my heart in the movie that we're going to be showing here in Shepherdstown, in plain sight, they interview a young lady who, in the Baltimore area, and this person who was talking with her said, "How can I help you? What do you need?" And she says, "I need underwear. My pimp will not allow me to have underwear." Now, at first that makes absolutely no logical sense. But it does make sense, because what he's saying is that part of your body I own.
Right.
I have control over it. You don't need underwear. So this woman, bless her heart, who has started a home in Baltimore to help these women, to recreate their lives, she just went out and bought underwear like mad. And every time she would see the girl working somewhere on the streets or something, she would stop her car and she'd hand her another bag of underwear, because as probably as it is, when they don't have a home, etc., just think about it, they have no place to wash or to do the things that normal people would do. So yeah, amazing way of taking away a person's total dignity. The other thing, of course, that happens to a lot of these young girls is when they are first brought in, boys as well, and let me not say that this is only a girl problem. I'm a girl, so I think of girls more, although I raised 3 boys, so I guess I always thought my boys could take care of themselves, but that's not really true in our society at times. But many times when they first bring them in and they kind of soften them up in a sense. They prepare them for this lifestyle that they're going to be at. They're beaten, they're raped, and then they treat their wounds with drugs. So the drugs, of course, help the pain and take away the sense of this horrid reality.
Right.
But it totally, of course, then makes them dependent on the pimp. So, yeah. A person who at first posed to be their boyfriend and lover turns out to be just a nightmare. A nightmare.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, the organization H.E.A.T will be having a showing in plain sight Sunday, May 22nd at 6 o'clock.
At Covenant Church.
At Covenant Baptist Church, right here in Shepherdstown. The address will be on the screen. One of the great ideas that you all have came up with is channeling your outreach to junior high and high school age students in order to generate more awareness.
Yes. I'll tell you, I'm scared to death. But I know when I look at the statistics, the average age for girls is 12 to 14. The average age for boys is 11 to 13. Heartbreaking as that is, because I was a junior high and high school teacher for many, many years, I would love to say that we need to let them enjoy their innocence while they still can. But on the other hand, we have to protect children from the reality of what could be around the corner for them. They need to understand that many people who pose to be in their favor are not. From my own personal life, and that goes back many, many years, but at age 11, junior high age, I would drive to school with my mom because we lived out of town. And my mother was a county health nurse, so I would ride to the courthouse with her. And then from the courthouse, I would just cross the main street, which is in a little town of Terrific Consequences, wasn't very big. But, and on the way down to the middle school, there was a little candy store, like, handy little convenience store. And all the kids would stop in there, of course, on the way to school. So one morning I stopped in there and picked up whatever little treat that I was going to get. And there was a 20-some-year-old man who started just being very nice and just talking up a storm to me. And somehow, thank the Lord, I had an evil sort of feeling. I didn't feel good about him because he was trying to encourage me to skip school and go have fun with him that day. And I decided I would better get myself to school. So I did. I ran all the way to school. And luckily, I had the good sense to run into the nurse's office and tell the nurse that I just didn't feel good about this man. And not that he had done anything to me, but I just had a bad feeling. And so she called my mother, who called the police because she worked closely with them. And sure enough, they checked him out, and he had just gotten out of prison for child molestation. So, it's everywhere. It doesn't matter how small the community, it is a reality. Yeah. And as much as we want to protect our children and want to keep them innocent, I get the opportunity. In fact, Jenny Childs, the lady who was helping me with the presentation yesterday, she's going to also help me to do our first kind of step into this territory at the youth group meeting at Covenant Church this next week. And I'm very nervous about it, but I'm also very excited about the opportunity. I've been to several programs here in the area where I know that, like, Virginia is actually creating curriculums to be taught in school to teach the kids about especially internet safety, but also the reality of what human trafficking is and how they can so easily be lured in by an older, nicer person who gives them gifts, who tells them they're always interested in everything they're interested in. Oh, you like that music? I love that music. You like that artist? I love that. You know, they are amazingly good at listening, which for a lot of 11, 12, 13-year-olds, they feel like nobody is listening to them. You know, they've hit the age where their parents are stupid, and now all kids, when they're 11, 12, 13, they hit that age where, parents don't know anything, you know. And they feel isolated. They feel like no one's hearing them. And that's their vulnerability, because these people will listen to them. These people will make them feel important. It's a great tactic for winning their trust. They give them expensive gifts, and they slowly but surely isolate them from their friends, from their families, you know, and then eventually they will ask for sexual favors, and because this young person is so in love with them at that point, they don't want to lose them, then they will give in to that request. And once that is a victory, then from there it's downhill, because then you have the guilt card. You know, what would your parents think? You know, what would your friends think? And so you entrap them in guilt, and you threaten, and then you just, it keeps going, and it's very sad. Some of them are actually abducted very violently, and that is also, I mean, you can start to read these stories and never stop. I read the story on the news of a woman who the guy had, quote, bought her for the night, and he poured oil on her and lit her on fire, and then dumped her into a trash, you know, a big trash dumpster for dead. How she lived, I don't know. And because if you can imagine just the burns, etc., you know, just the horrendous thing. But to think that someone feels they have a right because they have bought you, they can do anything they want, you know, anything they want to you, it is very, very, very sad. It is heartbreaking.
Well, I will say on behalf of the Black Student Union, one of our missions this fall is to do a BSU Talks, and that's when we'll go to the local high schools and speak to an auditorium. And we're working on getting that together this summer, and I would love to do a collaborative event with H.E.A.T and bring awareness to human trafficking and hit it right there in junior and high schools.
Wow, that would be so great. One of the things that we've been made aware of is that a lot of this can be gang-related activity. And in order to gain admission to a gang, etc., you know. There's a film, Chosen, that you might be interested in looking at. Chosen kind of shows how the gangs work in the junior highs and high schools to control and to bring that. What we need desperately in this world is positive role models. We need positive role models for men. What is a real man? You know? In some of the interviews, like they asked the guy, well, when was the first time that you ever bought a woman for sex? And he says, well, for my 18th birthday, my dad and I shared a woman. Excuse me? Is that sort of like at age 21 you go out and share a beer with your dad because you're now of legal age? You know, it's just incredible to me to think that that mentality would be handed down from generation to generation. They interviewed one man and he said, they asked him, about how many times do you think you've bought a woman on, you know, and he said, probably about 100 times. And they said, well, do you think those women have pimps? Yeah, maybe half of them. And the fact is, probably 95% or more have pimps, because the women never actually benefit from the money.
Exactly.
That is the weird stuff. That's
the
will be given quotas. You cannot come home this night until you have gotten $500 or $1,000.
Right.
You know. And they don't see any of that money. You know, the best they're going to get is a meal, and you know, maybe some sleep. And sometimes in some of the interviews, they'll say they'll go for days without sleep. You know, and just that torture that they go through.
One of the things he and other human trafficking awareness groups are trying to advocate is that if we stop the buyers, the sellers don't have anybody to sell to. Stop the buyers, we stop the sellers, and we can help stop human trafficking.
It is sadly a very broken system that feeds on itself. The more we view pornography, the greater we stimulate the need for sex. And so many, this man who had bought a woman 100 times, they said, why do you do it? He says, well, I want sex with no strings attached. I don't want to be in a relationship. I don't want to have obligations. And sadly, in our society, a lot of people are like that. They don't want responsibility. So, you know, if you father a child and you don't want that child, just go have an abortion. You know, that'll take care of that problem, right? It is a very broken system because I find that the joy and the beauty of sex as it was created to be is lost. And instead, because we're overstimulating people with the pornography, eventually they need more and more violent or more weird situations.
Right. To get a ride.
Yeah, this Time magazine on this young man who's actually starting a movement to stop porn.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw this, it said porn. I didn't really focus in on the big X in the middle of it, but you know, he's saying, hey, this has messed up my life, and it's messing up a lot of people's lives. You know, now this young man of 26 years old, he says, a beautiful woman doesn't do it for me. I am so hooked on the images that I have seen that the only way that I'm going to have an erection is by looking at the pornography. And he's heartbroken because he realizes he's messed up. This is not working. This is not what life is all about. So it's exciting to me to know that young men are speaking up, but it's hard for me to realize how rampant the use of pornography is, how many people truly are totally hooked on it.
And I was looking that another goal of HEAT is to bring more awareness to the male audience and get their support in spreading this much needed message. What are some methods that can be taken?
Well, there are a tremendous amount of films and things. One of the films that we showed on campus earlier in this year that is always worth repeating, because I think only 20 or maybe 30 people came to see it, was the film Nefarious. I think Nefarious gives you a worldwide perspective, and it also shows how men are actively involved in trying to make a difference and to stop this, crime against humanity. So I think for me personally, one of the thoughts that I had was to try to reach out in like our church to the men's group and just ask to speak to them. I thought about asking to speak to the Rotary Club in town, which is not only men, but primarily men. One of the good things I think I shared with you was that the police department here at Shepherd, right at the beginning of the year, held a training.
Exactly.
Yeah. We met with them. And
Chief McAvoy
met with us and agreed to inviting other police, from the area. And I think that's something that we could easily repeat because there are the FBI and the Homeland Security have trainers. That's their job. They're good at training this kind of thing. And so I would like to create a bigger event here in the area. About a year and a half ago, they had a bigger event in Charlestown, which was kind of a half to almost a full day event with speakers. And one of the speakers for that was a man who was able to overcome his addiction to pornography and was able to honestly deal with where he was and was able to speak on a man's perspective. And I think that's so important for us to realize that everyone involved in this, in a sense, is a victim.
Yes.
Even the pimps. In a strange sort of way, many of them
have got to the point where they devalue or dehumanize a woman. What caused them to get there?
Right. Were they abused as children? How is this, quote, easy money scheme so important in their lives? There's something wrong.
Exactly.
And that's important to realize that something in their lives is broken. And there's certainly something wrong with the men who are having to go out and purchase sex. Because that means they are not in a healthy relationship. Because if they were in a healthy relationship, there'd be no need. There's absolutely no need. So a lot of people are being hurt in the process of this. Years ago, when I was growing up, boys found pictures in daddy's closet because they found Playboy magazine or that kind of thing, right?
Guilty.
Well, but today, just totally innocently, you can be on your internet. Just, for example, if you want to look up pictures of the White House, you type in White House, and if you fail to put .gov, which most little kids wouldn't think to put .gov, or grandmas like me don't think it, and you end up in a porn site. Yeah. Or I used to volunteer at a place that recycled clothing and helped women who were coming out of jail and things like that to reestablish their lives, and it was called Treasure House. So one day I'm trying to explain to somebody where Treasure House is, and I quickly type it in, thinking I would pull up the address for Treasure House in Pittsburgh, and whoop, that's not what I got. So it's sad, but the information age, which is wonderful. I mean, if I want to learn more about human trafficking, I can very quickly learn a lot.
Yes.
And there is a lot of good stuff out there to be learned on human trafficking. But that very same machine that does that can also bring me into Backpage and all those other things that will show me where and when to buy a human being. Yeah, so I still really like the film. It's it's somewhat older, but just the concept of the first movie I saw was Not for Sale, and I think that's really, you know, they even had neat sort of T-shirts that said "Not for sale."
Mm-hmm.
Human beings should not be for sale. Yeah. And this also, you know, gets us into things like what we purchase too. We shouldn't be purchasing things because they're cheaper, but they're cheaper because child labor was used to produce this product, you know. So as we start to look at slavery, you know, we need to look at it in a much broader basis. And I've really admired Kate Didden and the Catholic House, because they have really worked hard to do things like buy fair trade chocolate, fair trade coffees and teas, and just to raise awareness of the fact that, you know, it's just not right. Yeah, it's just not right for us to gain from child labor.
He has a fundraiser event coming up.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll let Miss Rita explain. But it'll be held at the Town Brewery, May 14th. So you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
That just came out of a fun exercise class. You know, you never know when your inspiration's going to hit you, but we were doing water aerobics and we were doing it to all oldies but goodies. And it just hit me. Shepherdstown has fun music. Like, I like to go to O'Hurley's and listen to, you know, the traditional type of music and things. But I haven't heard any real 50s music in this area. So it's really great. The town-run brewery owner was right on. He said, yeah, let's do it. And the goal of the evening is to raise funds for the shelter. It costs, it's hard to believe, but it costs $100 a night to keep someone safe. And oftentimes the shelter has more people than it can hold. They have 15 beds, but
those people they have to turn away.
And they don't like turning anybody away in the night. But if they have extra money, they will put them in hotels. They have a special hotel that works closely with them. But, so, our goal is $100, you know, lots of nights. So, we already have two. Thanks to a generous donation of a friend of mine. She was excited about it, so she wrote a check, and we've matched that, so we'll be at 4. And so, no matter what people give, whether it's $1, $10, or $100, whatever they give, every time we will have people from Shenandoah Women's Shelter who will keep track, and every time we hit 100, we're going to celebrate. We're going to dance and twist, dance the night away. We're supposedly, I hope it's going to come true, a couple Shepherd students are going to do some teaching of some of the dance steps from 7 to 8. And then at 8, the DJ will take over, and they will, I guess it goes till about 2 in the morning. I'm not sure that I'm going to make it that long.
I'm excited.
But I think we'll have a good time. We hope to kind of decorate it in the 50s theme. We already have a 50s show motorcycle, looking for maybe a couple 50s cars. Gonna see, we have an old record player, some 45s and LPs and things that you probably don't even know what they look like. But
well, I'll be finding out.
But yes, please come. It's going to be a great time. And whatever, you know, if you can't donate, come anyway. Have a good time. Have a good time.
Perfect time to be educated on human trafficking.
We will have a little bit of information out, but the main purpose of that evening is to have fun.
Have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're very proud that the 3D race did help
Oh,
the
yes,
Wellness
ma'am.
Center a lot. The Shenandoah Women's Center, I think they had like 115 runners, and so that
It
was
was,
a great thing.
April 17th, this past Sunday, 3D had a Relay for Life, and proceeds went to the Shenandoah Women's Shelter. So,
Yeah.
that was
And
a
my
good event.
grandkids ran in it.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
was proud
I
as
know you
peacock.
were. I know you were.
It was fun. But yeah, we really want to, when we first began this, the goal was to bring the university and the town together
Right.
in a combined effort. And our goal was one event per semester. I think looking at our schedule here lately, April, we had April 9th, the 10th, the 11th, the 20th,
Yes,
the
y'all had a
17th,
lot
the
even-
27th. And we're going into May, and we feel like shutting down for the summer would be a mistake.
No, you can't shut down.
Even though there's fewer students, hopefully some of those students will have just a little more time, because I know summer school, you usually take maybe 2 classes or something, and hopefully they will get more involved and we can continue to raise awareness. We are going to try to reach into the junior highs. We're hoping there's one church in town that is going to be offering a Bible study that is going to be centered on themes on human trafficking, because this is nothing new.
It's not.
It's in the Bible. I mean, you can find it. It's there. So there is nothing new under the sun, sadly.
And it's not as distant as you may think. It could be right in your backyard.
Yeah. The sad part about every trafficked victim I've ever spoken to is every one of them can reach back to an early time in their life when they were molested by family members, friends, that kind of thing. And it's that innocence lost that seems to make them so much more vulnerable in life, throughout life. So it's very tragic to think that we actually do this to our children.
Each year, 100,000 to 300,000 American children are at risk of being trafficked. So, ages average from 12 to 14 years old.
And the boys, it's younger, 11 to 13 for the boys. And the problem with the boys is that they don't tell. Therefore, we don't have good statistics. When a boy is sexually abused, he is somehow just innerly so torn that he can't tell anyone. And it's tragic because we can't get him help. You know, girls are more apt to eventually. Very few of them actually recognize themselves as victims.
Right.
Very few.
Just this past year, 2015, these may not be solid, and I say that because some of them may not have been reported, but West Virginia has documented 48 calls regarding human trafficking and 10 cases, known cases. Maryland has had 451 calls regarding human trafficking and 514 cases. Nonetheless, there may be more that weren't reported. So.
The irony of that, when you look, you can go on the national website and you can look at all the states all around West Virginia. Virginia has 600 and some cases. Pennsylvania has 600 or 500 cases. You know, all around us, there are reported cases. I don't think we just have a flock of angels guarding West Virginia.
Exactly.
What we have is an uneducated populace who don't realize that there is help for them. They don't know that there's a hotline number. They don't know how to get help. And most of these other cases, it's because people have called in. what they've seen. You know, Truckers Against Trafficking doesn't tell you, oh, grab that girl and put her in your car and take her away from this dangerous situation. They say, no, call. Give information. What's the vehicle? What's the license plate? Description of the people that you've seen. And you might be wrong. You might be wrong. And that's okay. They are very much okay with you reporting something that looks weird to you. Because what if you're right? Can you make a difference? On the training video that they have, in the end, they have a young girl and her cousin who had been abducted, and they were forced to work the truck stops. And it was a trucker who called in and said, hey, there's a young girl, she looks like she might be 14 years old. If he hadn't made that call, heavens knows where she would be today. But she was rescued because someone gave a tip. And that's what we all have to do. We have to be willing. So, you know, all of us have cell phones. Just put it in your cell phone.
Yeah.
Just put it in there. I mean, we did have these fancy-dancy key fobs and things, but put it in your cell phone. That's all you need. And you can, if you suspect something, just call and just say what you've seen, where you are, the location. Give a description of the people. If you see a car or if you think you see someone lurking as a pimp, and sometimes pimps are women. Sometimes pimps are young. There have been cases of cheerleaders who were pimping out other girls.
Yes.
I mean, you know, just weird things happen. So we can't assume that we have a picture of what this person looks like. Yeah. Can be of any age, any sex. Yeah.
Well, Mrs. Nieman, I want to commend you. I want to give a shout out to Jenny Childs and the rest of the H.E.A.T organization for the work that y'all are doing. You have put a lot of work and effort into this, and I'm grateful and I'm motivated to be involved. So
that is music to my ears.
Yes, ma'am. I want to thank you for being on Digging Deep with Dix today.
Thank you. Our next meeting is Friday. We've switched because it's always on a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Friday, May. Do I have it written down? I have it written down. I just have to grab my calendar because I have the wrong thing here. But it's going to be in the Shenandoah room. It's Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
I should have remembered that. At 12:30.
At 12:30.
Yeah.
In the Shenandoah room.
In the Shenandoah room.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll be happily planning for summer events.
Yes, ma'am. I'm excited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Take care.
Take care. It's been real.
Uh-huh.